I want you to remember back when you were younger, under your parents or under the authority of another person, someone much older than you, when you were a child, and you would receive commands or rules or things that that were required of you that you really had no interest in. One of those things for me was bedtime. And to be fair, I didn't really argue against my parents with it, but I never liked it. To this day, I don't like bedtime. If I had the option of never sleeping again in my life and functioning normally, I would take it. I don't like to sleep. I just don't. I don't know why. It's just something built in. I once read about a pill they developed that would let people just stay awake and not lose function. I thought about it. But I hadn't been fully tested yet, so I thought maybe not. But when you're younger, there is some rule, there is some regulation, there is something that your parents or someone told you or that required of you that you didn't like. We're all like that. But think of when you have your own children. And consider if you impose any of those rules and regulations on them as an experienced adult who knew what was best for them. Again, in our case, we'll go back to bedtime. Growing up, even through junior high, we were in bed at 8:30. People here are like, whoa, your parents are nuts. But 8:30, it was go to your room, go to bed. Now with my own children, despite my loathing of bedtime, 8 o'clock rolls around and go to bed. Every night, unless there is a church function or something special going on. If it's a normal night, 8 o'clock, go to bed. Now Liam will take the cat and go to bed and go to sleep. On school nights, since Hayden's a few years older, he can stay up till 8:30 reading or drawing or whatever. On the weekends or during the summer, he can stay up till 9. But even at 10 years old, Hayden is starting to complain. Why do I have to go to bed now? My friends aren't going to bed now. It's so light outside, I can hear children in the street. Why do I have to go to bed? Guess what, child? When I was your age, I heard kids in the street, and I still had to go to my room. We don't give them those rules. We don't bind those things on them arbitrarily, or because we want to hurt them, or because we want to just lock them down. But in today's world, we are constantly bombarded with the idea that any sort of restriction placed on us is inherently bad. This is what our culture, what every part of culture tells us today. That to restrict oneself is to limit your potential, is to limit yourself, is to hold yourself back. And really the new normal today is that we should only be limited in our actions by the consent of another person, and only if it involves them personally. My actions should only be limited by Jose if they involve him personally and he does not want to be involved. And that should be the only limitation. Meanwhile, the very word religion comes from the French word religare, which means to bind, to constrict, which goes directly against what those in places of cultural power desire today. To bind oneself, to constrict oneself, to hold oneself back is considered inherently bad. You might hear it described as oppressive, or repressive, or unfair, or normative, or bigoted, or fill in the blank. And that thought leads us directly, if we follow the natural course of it, leads us directly to saying, well, nothing and no one should ever be able to bind or restrict me, including God. Because if I bind myself by a book, if I bind myself by a doctrine or a dogma or a teaching or the Bible or God or whatever, I will never reach my potential as a person. I'll never achieve or acquire the happiness that is guaranteed to me if I could only be free of it all. But if we will consider it truthfully and thoughtfully, we'll see God's commands for what they truly are. A blessing meant to aid us in life rather than to harm or belittle us. I know another family that they live in another place, another state. I just know them. We're gonna keep with this bedtime analogy. But no bedtimes, no restrictions on what they eat, no restrictions on what they watch, no restrictions on what they play. Do what you want, when you want, for how long you want. When you get tired, you'll just fall asleep, go to bed. Don't worry about me, just do your own thing. And it's been disastrous. What Hayden sees as a restriction and a binding is really given to him as a blessing for his good. Because to set him free in the ways that he wants to be free will bring great harm to him. That's what my parents understood with my brother and I growing up. It's what we now understand with our children as they grow up. And it's something that we need to understand when it comes to God's commands, because God's commands are meant to bless us and help us and aid us in our walk towards Him. Today we're going to be in Matthew chapter 6 and chapter 7. Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 19, part of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but rather lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So Jesus gives both a warning and a promise here. He warns us to let go of earthly desires, to let go of earthly treasures, to not allow those things to control us. That's the warning. He says, don't do this, but instead build up that which is permanent in heaven. This is the promise that is offered. If we will relinquish one, we can do something better. If we will let go of that which can be destroyed or stolen or lost, then we can build that which is permanent, which cannot be destroyed, which cannot be stolen, which cannot be corrupted in any way, that which is permanent with Him. And I wonder what would happen if we could see this truth, if we could really understand this truth internally. What might change for us? But notice that Jesus doesn't give this command just to hold people down. He doesn't command this constricting of oneself just for kicks, does he? He wants to offer something better. He wants to offer something greater. But the greater can only be gained if the lesser is let go of. I remember another preacher at one point talking about walking with his son on the beach and picking up little pieces and scraps of shells, and his son's just picking them up because they're shiny and they're just neat. And he's full of them. His hands are full. And they look out and there's a giant starfish floating on the top of the water. His son runs out a little bit. He stops and he runs back. And Daddy goes, well, go get it, go get it. So he runs out again, runs a little bit farther, gets closer, and then stops. And he runs back. Then Dad says, well, why didn't you just grab it? Just go out and grab it. And the son goes, I can't. My hands are full of shells. My hands are full of these broken pieces of shells. But there's something so much better right there, but I can't grab it because I can't let go of this. It's worthless broken pieces of shell. And there's something so great right there, but I can't grab it because I can't let go. But we have to let go if we're going to grab something greater. Because he warns us that where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. He doesn't say where your heart is, there your treasure will be. He says where your treasure is, there your heart will be. So two very different things. In chapter 7, verse 7 through 12, he says, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, knock and it will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Or what man is there among you who, if his son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you want men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the law and the prophets. So again, Jesus gives an encouragement. He gives a direction for us to go. He says, ask and seek and knock and keep on doing so. The grammar here is ask and keep on asking, knock and keep on knocking, seek and keep on seeking. And God will provide what is needed. He says you're not going to be left out in the cold. You won't be left and forgotten. You won't be ignored. But instead, do the hard work of asking and seeking and knocking, because sometimes it is hard. You even remember when you were a little kid and you had to ask a grown-up for something that you really wanted? I'm trying to teach Liam this right now. We'll be looking for something, and he'll want to know if, for example, if a store has something. I say, well, go ask the guy at the counter. And he'll go, and he'll kind of stop and kind of back up again. Like, go on, go ask him. He says, well, can you ask for me? Well, no, I can't. You need to go. I will even walk behind you. In case anything happens, I'll be right there. But he has to work up this courage to go and ask. A couple weeks ago, we're at this card store, and he wanted to know if they had the certain type of cards. So I said, go ask. He's asking for cards. I mean, he's not asking for a car. He's not asking for $1 million. He's not asking for their kidney. He's asking if they carry a certain type of card. But he's terrified to ask. And it may not be so hard as a grown-up for us to walk up to a counter and ask the store clerk if they have something. But there are times where that same fear, that same nervousness begins to overcome us when we come before our Heavenly Father to ask for His help. There are times where that is hard. There are times where that can become scary. Not because we think he's going to turn around and slap us, just because we're human. We get nervous about things sometimes. What we need to realize is that our God is a good Father. That's what Jesus says right here, isn't it? He says, look, if you as a human, corruptible parent, if you who commit evil know how to give good things to your children, know how to take care of your children, then how much more will God know how to take care of you? He who is perfect, who is flawless, who is completely loved, who is all for you. How much better will he be able to take care of you? And so we can trust him. Verse 24, Jesus says at the very end of this sermon, therefore whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. But everyone who hears these sayings of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew and beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And so again, we have Jesus' warning and promise. The warning is to do the hard work of following his commands. I'm going to go and just venture to say that it's a whole lot easier to just build a house right on top than dig all the way down to the bedrock and then build it. But that hard work is meant to bless us. It's meant to make us strong. Because notice what he says. It says, he who has done the hard work of following his commands, like the house built on that solid rock, on that solid foundation. And so when persecutions, prosecutions, when the difficulties of life came and beat on you, you could stand. But if we don't, then those storms can and will destroy us. See, God gives us commands to bless us, not to harm us. There are things that we bind on ourselves in order to make our lives better. We do this to ourselves. I don't eat a whole tub of ice cream at once because I know that's going to be really bad for me. And if you know me by now, you know how much I like ice cream. I would love to eat the whole tub, the whole canister if it's homemade. But I can't, because it will harm me. We do this all the time with ourselves. We restrict certain areas of our lives based on what we think will be best for us. God's commands are always what is best for us. Because just as we do with our children, God desires us to have the best possible, and he gives us the path to follow in order to make that happen. Over the next several weeks, we're going to take a look at the 10 Commandments and what they mean for us in light of Jesus' commands in the New Testament. How those rules, how those laws can be a blessing and a strength to us in today's world. Because they are meant to bless. They have always been meant to bless God's people. And so my hope, my prayer for this weekend going on is that our lives will reflect the blessings God has given in his commands for our good. It's so much more joyful, it's so much easier to follow commands that we understand are for our blessing, right? If we can see the good that will come from them, if we can see the blessings that will flow from following those commands, it will become so much easier for us to follow and obey, become what God desires us to be. And so, it's my prayer that we will be able to see these things in that way. And see all of life through the lens of recognizing the blessings God has given us and the commands He has made of us. So we can become more and more like Jesus Christ. I hope that we'll do so today and starting now, while we stand, while we sing.